All right, in this demonstration, we're going to show how we can connect information from regulations over to applications to understand, does the application comply with the regulations? So for this example, we just prepared this for the conference this week, but I want to show you how we can go and pick a particular topic and dive really deeply into it. So the one we're going to look at is the section 317, the well construction and completion process. So I'm just going to jump to that page, and we are going to find a section 3 here. And let's zoom in a bit. So in the regulations, it states that the surface casings shall be set to a depth below the base of the lowest most underground source of drinking water and shall be cemented to ground surface. So that's the regulation. On the application side, there's going to be information in here that's going to be able to figure out, like, what does that mean in terms of depths? How deep does the casing need to be, and what's the depth of the water table? So in here, in the application, you can see there's some general information here, and it talks about the base of the lowermost groundwater is approximately 1,090 feet below ground level. So that's how deep this water needs to be. And if we go into this document and scroll down some more, another part of the document, they actually talk about the technical well design. And you can see indeed here that the surface casing section extends down to 2,500 feet. So we're down at 2,500 feet. So it definitely meets that requirement. So let's see, what we're going to do is we're going to take these two documents and we're going to ingest them into our application, which is a knowledge graph AI powered reasoning system. And what it can do is you can define what you want to extract from documents, and then it'll go through the document and run an extraction and put all the information in what we call a knowledge graph. And a knowledge graph is just a way to connect information together from various sources. So let me show you what that looks like after we've ingested it into the platform. All right, so this is the graph. We're going to start out with, let's just take a look at the application. So in the system, you essentially can go in and take a look. So this is the high-level node about that project. So you can see it's got some information about, so this is all extracted from that document, some basic high-level information. But with this now, we can start exploring. I can take this node and I can expand it. And I can say, what else is this connected to? And in this case, you can see it's managed to connect us up. Everything that's red here are regulations. And the way I've set this up is I've basically taken this application and I've said, go in and extract essentially the information about regulations related to water depth. So here's that surface casing one. So if I double click on that, you can see indeed it tracks where this information came from in the regulation. This is section 317C3, which indeed is what we saw in the original document. So it's saying, okay, so it needs to be, so that's the regulation. Okay, great. So now we know that this application needs to comply to it, but let's go a bit further. Let's expand this and take a look at what does this regulation, we have a compliance check here. So whenever there's a regulation, what we've done is we've built a compliance check that checks, is that regulation met? And if I double click on that, you can see here, it has been able to extract out a compliance check that it clearly passed. But it went in and said the surface casing extends to 2,500 feet and the base, so it pulled together that information and it was able to put it in here and show what that margin was. So if I take this compliance check and I expand it, we can start to see what else we know about. So we also extracted from that document all of the casing strings. So in this case, here's the surface casing. I can double click on it and you can see the depth of it, the casing size, the type, the grade of the casing, and some more information about it. So this information, this came out of the document over here, and you can see it probably pulled that from this information here. This is where that information lives in the document. But instead of going through and pulling all of this up manually and piecing it all together, we wanted to see if we could just extract it, and then take all of the extractions, put them into this graph of how things connect to each other. And then we can run AI reasoning on top of this and be able to ask questions about the graph, be able to check compliance on different things. So let's keep going. So we're on the surface casing. I'm just going to expand this and take a look at what the surface casing connects to. Now the surface casing is connecting to a well here. So this is the original well. So this application is proposing essentially two wells. So you can see how these are labeled. So this application proposes a well called the Hackberry injection well number 1, and it also proposes a monitoring well. So this well has casing strings. This is just a surface casing, which has to have a compliance check, which satisfies a regulation that allows that to be complied with. This surface casing here also has to be cemented to surface. So there's a cement job we were able to extract, and if we look at it, we can see the information about that cement job, where the bottom of the cement was, where the top of the cement was, and clearly it's at 0, so therefore it complies. This well here, although has casing information, I can go and look at all of the other casing as well. There's a couple other casing strings we loaded in here, the production casing and a couple of intermediate strings. So all of this information is connected together in a graph. We could expand that and we could take a look at, well, what needs to be protected? So this hackberry injection needs to protect this aquifer here, which is the Chi-Chot aquifer system. I could take that aquifer, I can expand it, and take a look at what else is connected to this particular aquifer. And you can see that this well here, the monitoring well, is monitoring this aquifer. This aquifer overlies a different geological formation, in this case Austin Chalk formation. You can keep going, we can expand that, and really start to build up, how does all of these pieces of information connect to one another. Let's expand it one more time. There we go. So we're getting a picture here of some very physical information. So here's the well. It penetrates both Austin Chalk and Tuscaloosa formation, and that overlies this other one that must be protected. So a graph is really giving a semantic representation of how all of these regulations and technical information from the application process connect together. And then we can build automatic checks that come in that compare information in the application to the regulation. Okay, now we've shown you how we pull everything together behind the scenes. Let's show you what a user experience would look like. So what we've done is we've connected our AI up to this graph, and we're now going to ask a question of the AI, and it's going to use the graph to answer that question, and it's going to ground everything that it comes back with in the information that we've passed it. So I'm going to ask it the question, does the Hackberry Injection 1 well comply with the regulations related to underground source of drinking water, specifically related to the cemented depths? So what it's going to do, this agent is going to start coming up with questions so that it can get information from the graph to be able to answer this question. So let's take a look at what it's doing. So it's going in and it's essentially pulling information back from the graph. We'll let this run for a second while it gets some information, but you can see it's calling these different tools. So we're using something called an MCP server here, which allows us to have the AI have access to different ways of querying the data, connecting to different sources. So you can see it's coming up with its own questions here. It's looking for the Hackberry injection well compliance verification. So it's trying to pull information back from the graph. So this is really just showing its homework, how it's trying to come up with things. Okay, so it looks like it's found the information it needs, it's looking for some additional casing depths, and then it comes up with an answer. And this is sort of the main thing that we want to be able to look at. And here it certainly says that, yep, the injection well does comply, and then it starts quoting the surface casing depth. That'll show you the regulation, where this comes from in the graph. So I can click on that, and you can see the actual legal text of what we're trying to comply towards. We go down, we can see that the surface casing extension is a pass. The surface casing extends to 2,500 feet, while the base is at 1090 or 1,090 feet, providing a certain margin. If I click on that, we can actually see the result of that check. If I keep going down, we get some more information about it, and then it sort of summarizes everything. So it sort of shows its work. Here's the detailed analysis at the top, and then we come into the regulation information. We can see the well construction details, the size and grade of the casing, and then finally a conclusion. And it shows how many hallucinated references there were. And we can even go in here and show the graph. And what we're doing here is we're showing all the information from that graph that we used to construct this answer. So here's the well, here's the casing strings that we looked at, here's the geological formations we talked about, here's the application. So it's all together in one spot.